WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. March Madness in full go. Opening day around the corner, and of course, it's always football season. I'm wearing my purple Curio shirt. It only looks like a Lamar Jackson. It's not. It's like the O from the Curio with the underscore under here. Brian Sanderoff joining us here from Curio Wellness, one of our great sponsors. They are out in Timonium. They, of course, do medicinal cannabis, education, CBD, all that other stuff. I got something for you with springtime, though, and I don't think this has anything to do with cannabis. I think this has to do with maybe your pharmacy background from when you were a pharmacist. In 1988, I used to have the worst hay fever. My dad would mow the lawn, and you would give me some sort of Claritin-y type of thing or whatever that product was or whatever. Then you started to do holistic, and I know my son also had some issues and saw you years ago, and I've seen you. You have, like, other products there for spring that can stop people like me from sneezing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now's the perfect time for it because what we find is from a holistic, meaning an herbal nutritional perspective, for people that have seasonal allergies, if you can get those things on board before the allergies actually hit, it's much more effective, and so it's perfect timing.
Really? So it's sort of like preventative, like sort of when I took Floristore before I went to Mexico or something like that, right?
Exactly. And you know, what medicine has to offer for allergies, antihistamines, is not really fixing a problem. It's trying to cut down on the body's response. And histamine is an important neurotransmitter, actually. It's part of what gets you up in the morning, and, you know, it has some legitimate uses in the body. And when you try to cut down on histamine production or block histamine, you end up causing other problems. That's why people get drowsy from those medicines or whatever. And so trying to...
Well, we've all taken them, right? I mean, there's no... I have never met anybody that hasn't at some point sneezed and had the, you know, the wheezy and feeling like, oh, take a pill. And that's what I've been doing it my whole life. I mean, going back to when I was a kid, you know? I used to see like real doctors for this when I was 5 and 6. My eyes, I looked like I'd been punched when I was at school because when you're 8 years old, you rub your eyes. The more you rub them, the bigger. You know, I mean, I had a real problem with that. I still do to some degree. I was sneezing on the camera last week. Somebody's making fun of me on the YouTube. I can't stop sneezing on live video, you know, so I hit the mute button and I'm in here, but it gets a hold of people. And I think mine's gotten better with my diet. I mean, I think anybody that's known me knows I'm healthier as a 50-year-old than I was as a 30-year-old. But I think foods and all sorts of weird things and GMO, you know, I don't know what it is, but I know I'm better with it as I've lived a cleaner lifestyle as I've gotten older.
Yep, no question about that. We see that with a lot of people. So we have this product that's called Natural D-Hist. It's an herbal and nutritional product, and it works great. And now's the time to get on it for people that have those seasonal allergies. And the reports that I get from my patients is that they don't suffer as they go through the season like they have in the past. And also comes in a chewable tablet for kids.
Suffer through the season, chewable tablet. It almost sounds like the Orioles. I mean, it sounds like opening day next week. You know, we've been pals a long time, and Brian Sanderoff's here, Curio Wellness. Go check him out. York Road, just south of Timonium Road. Yes, they do medicinal cannabis. Yes, he is an expert. And yes, he can get you where you need to be for learning medicines and all that good stuff and doing holistic medicines and all that. But first and foremost, you and I are sports guys, dude, right? It's like, this is a crazy week, right? I mean, the March Madness thing and the Terps, and we're all praying. The Ravens, I'm going out to Arizona this week where I hope to not be sneezing at all from the cactus out there and spring training ending earlier, but you're a baseball first guy. I mean, like, I think you're a baseball first guy. If I'm saying that wrong, correct me.
No, well, I mean, I will say that I really used to be a baseball first guy. I guess that's
going around.
Maybe because of the condition of the Orioles and the condition of the ownership over the past 20 years or whatever. I'm probably a football first guy now, but this time of year, of course, it's hard not to have that spring fever, and this is one of my favorite times of year.
We haven't lost yet.
That's right. But March Madness is huge. I love that. So
well, you're a Maryland guy. You're a Maryland grad, right?
Yeah. So the next 3 years will be great. I used to have a group of poker buddies, and we used to go out to Vegas for this first weekend every year, and it was the best weekend to be in Vegas because there's games on all day long, and it doesn't matter what happens. on one of those monitors, half the people in the crowd are cheering and half the people are groaning.
It's one of the most expensive weekends in Vegas to get a room because it's it's almost like a fight weekend. It's so popular, you know.
Probably,
it's a perfect time to, you know. I mean, literally, in the early days of the Terps, I would wait for their seating and put my Southwest Airline miles together and fly to Jacksonville and be there for Belmont or you know, Temple, but Belmont at 2 o'clock a day. And I flew to Nashville and drove to Knoxville to see Steve Francis not score for 18 minutes in that game against St. John's. I mean, I went around. I was there when Joe Smith fell and hit his back in Oakland, California. Hard to believe it's 24 years ago that Joe Smith was there. Now, your era, when did you go to Maryland? For me, I was the bias era. I didn't go to Maryland, but that was my era. When I would have been a freshman, or I would have been a sophomore when Bias died, 86.
Albert King and Buck Williams were there when I was there. So,
wow, man, that was the glory era, right?
Yeah.
Dutch Morley, Reggie Jackson, right? The whole deal. Albert, right?
Love those guys. That's when that's when Lefty was the man, and it was a lot of fun.
Brian Sanderoff is here at Curio Wellness. By the way, if you've never seen the Lefty speech when he went into the Hall of Fame, carve out 45 minutes of your day and watch it. Just I mean, if you like the Earl Weaver, like kicking the umpire stuff, that's just 2 minutes of comedy. Lefty did one of the greatest induction speeches I've heard that didn't involve Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. I'll be honest with you. So make sure you go check that out.
I got the biggest kick out of hearing him do that, and the funniest thing was that he talked about that picture, and in my dorm room, Easton 4, we, on our floor, we actually had one of those pictures that was a picture of Lefty, and on his forehead was a gas tank with the needle on empty, and he talked about that in that speech.
Man, he threatened to make it to UCLA, the East, and you bought in, apparently, back in the day.
Oh, no question.
We all did. I mean, you know.
He's the guy who invented Midnight Madness.
He is. Yeah, we forget about that. You know, I never covered those Lefty teams because I was sort of a little young for that. You know, in '86, Bias died, and I was 18 years old at that time. And my dad and I went down for some of the Bob Wade games and whatnot. Then Gary took over, and I had Walt Williams on all the time. But that game they had a couple weeks ago where it was the generations where everybody came back, and Joe Smith is sitting next to Steve Blake, and all that. That's really something that Maryland should be proud of, and I hope that they make it into next week and give it a run down in D.C. and, get to see Duke or Michigan State or whatnot. But we got opening day, we got football, we got basketball, and we've got cannabis education, and that's what you do out of Curio Wellness and CBD and all of these things that are whispered about. No one knows who to go to. They go to the internet. That's kind of all behind us now. I mean, you're doing cooking classes. You're doing 101 classes. My wife and I have attended your 101 class. My wife's a 2-time cancer survivor. We've seen all the features on TV and all that stuff. But for you in springtime and people wanting a first touch at what is this, I think that, that's one of the reasons you're here, Bryce, to be a resource, for you and for Curio. You're right in Timonium. It's new. It's here to stay. We all know that. I know there's a bill down on the floor in Annapolis about we talk about Denver and Joe Flacco, and I've kidded him in the Dear Joe Flacco thing about the gummy bear. But where we are, it's an educational world for you because that's the front door, and that's what you're there for. And you've been there a year now. Hard to believe. Congratulations, right?
Yeah, thanks. I can't believe we've been open a year. To me, the education part is the really important part of this because the way the cannabis industry works here in Maryland, mostly the providers that are certifying you to be able to get cannabis, they're not educating you about how to use it. And that's really, really important, especially for people that are what we call cannabis naive. They don't, they haven't used it as medicine before. And so we're really big on the education. So once a month I teach a medical cannabis 101 class, and then we have other specialty classes, whether it's about CBD or a cooking class, as you mentioned. In May, we've got a class that is a panel of women to help address cannabis issues specifically in women and women, more women concerns. And so that education piece is really the important part of it. The way it is right now is sort of like caveat emptor. It's buyer beware. And so we're really strong on making sure that people understand the proper way to use this medicine. And that's what we encourage people to do. And so, people can go to our website. It's curiowellness.com. Click on the dispensary page, and then you can see our schedule of classes. And For the most part, they're free, and we encourage people to come take advantage of that.
Brian Sanderoff is our guest. Curio Wellness is our partner in crime. We are up on York Road, Timonium, just south. Find them, stop by, say hello. There's no, you don't need to present any ID to enter because you have a holistic, which is, what your business was for 20 years in helping people stop sneezing and stuff like that at this time of the year as well. But you can find them out there. One last thing for you, the taboo of this and the bud tender part of somebody's listening right now and says, I have a card, I go here, I go there, maybe I know what I want, maybe I learn on Leafly or on the web or whatever. I think there's a whole different thing that you're trying to do at your place on the educational side to take the taboo out of it, but also everyone, first off, it's not an inexpensive product, right? So I think like anything else, you want to know what you're doing and what's in it if this is the method you're going to go for medicine. And I don't know that in other places they call them bud tenders. You really don't like that term, do you?
No. My staff are patient care advisors, and they're trained in a very specific way by my standards to make sure that they can have proper conversations with patients to help them choose the most appropriate medicine for them. And unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm not making a judgment about that, but I want people to understand that this is medicine, potentially powerful medicine, potentially helpful, and potentially could cause some problems if it's not used appropriately. And that's what I want to do is make sure that people do use this medicine appropriately.
Last thing for you, and I'll get back to sports because I want to get your thoughts on the Joe Flacco thing because I wrote the Dear Joe letter and we haven't talked in a couple of weeks. But on the educational side of this, for you, the front door is what at Medical Cannabis 101 is that it is medicine, but more than that, I think over the last 5 or 10 years, I think the thing that woke my wife up the most was a couple of years ago, Sanjay Gupta with a child who was having seizures, right? Like that was the first story we saw that wasn't reefer madness or, what corner in the neighborhood, which we've lived our whole lives in that world, right? And, seeing that and understanding that there are now stories out there that are not snicker, that there are real cancer patients everywhere. And I think in the modern generation, over the last 10 years, you can now find these incredible human stories where human beings tell stories about what the medicine part of this has done for them, their child, their life, their peace of mind, their happiness, their comfort, all of that.
Yeah, in medicine, we call those anecdotes, and from a scientific perspective, we have a tendency to not pay attention to those, to say that's not scientific. And I've always said that anecdotal evidence doesn't mean anything until it's happened to you, and then it doesn't matter what the science says. And so, stories of children with autism and seizures, adults with MS and Parkinson's, and all of us with our sleep issues or pain issues. I can't tell you how many patients I have that no longer take their opioids because of this medicine, this cannabis. It just has been amazing. And it is one tool in the toolbox. It doesn't have to be the only tool. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first tool, but it is oftentimes a very powerful tool to help people with quality of life.
Brian Sanderoff's my pal. He's over at Curio Wellness doing it all and talking sports while we do it as well. Ravens, I got to get your Dear Joe sort of thoughts on the way out the door because I wanted to wait to see what he looked like at a Denver Broncos and what he would say and how. And I knew he wouldn't say they did me dirty. I mean, they paid him $148 million around here, as I pointed out. But I'm reading the Dear Joe letter. If you haven't heard it or read it, it's up at WNST.net. You can hear it out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault as well. But we really have ushered in a new era, right? Seeing that one Friday where Flacco's in Denver, Suggs is in Arizona, C.J. Mosley's wearing Jets gear, right? I mean, we go through the league, Weddle with the Rams and putting pictures up of him wearing Rams gear when he was 10 years old. He was a Rams fan when he was a boy. We're going to have to get a scorecard around here, Brian.
That's the nature of sports these days. I think the Trouts of the world who stay with their team for their entire career just aren't going to happen that much anymore. I love Joe. I think he's a good guy. I think he represented Baltimore well. And being intellectually honest, I'm kind of happy we're moving on because I don't think we were going to get anywhere. And so if we have to take a year to reset, then that's what we have to do. And it's just the nature of the business these days. You don't hear about our our friends to the north, the New England Patriots, signing all of these high profile free agents, and yet every year they're there. And so I think that we can emulate that ourselves as well.
You know, I read a great piece. Seth Wickersham wrote a piece on the Patriots and on how Belichick negotiates, you know, because this was all during, like, the tampering period last week, that Belichick says to an agent, when he gets the agent on the phone, he's like, this is the offer. Now, you know, Brian, you have to ask yourself if your client wants to win or not. If your client wants to win, he'll come to New England. You know, that's sort of the last hammer is, you know, okay, they'll pay you $150,000, $200,000 more over there. Maybe you get a little more guaranteed money, but does your guy want to win? Because if he wants to win, he's not signing with the Jets or the Raiders or Cleveland, who now is all of a sudden, you know, you said you go to Vegas for March Madness weekend. Go try to bet on Cleveland. All of a sudden, like they're like a favorite. I mean, what have they won ever? Anything? You know, what is Odell Beckham?
That place is a factory of sadness and will always be a factory of sadness, and it doesn't matter what players they have.
There you go. He is at Curio Wellness. Brian Sanderoff, our client, our friend, our sponsor, and our educator for all things medicinal and medical cannabis and CBD oils, which is also on the agenda, as well as some women's issues. A wealth of information, as always. The holistic products are there. There's a spa there. York Road, just south of Timonium Road. Learn more at CurioWellness.com. I will quiz you about the Terps, and hopefully we're talking about Duke, which I know you'll love to talk about next week, but I'm not going to hold my breath on all that. I've seen too many. We both have seen too many of these March Madnesses to talk about the Terps in the future tense, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is the case, but we'll see what happens. Miracles can happen, man.
Says the Terps graduate. Maryland, we're all behind you. There he goes. Brian Sanderoff, Curio Wellness, joining us out on York Road. You can find me out on the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. I have a new mobile device. I'm downloading the software and getting it going. It's been downloading now for 6 days. I'm on my 6th day, and I am at 65%. So they're organizing my stuff. It says so right on my mobile device. So when it gets together, I'll be able to use the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I'll be able to access the morning newspaper, all brought to you by Planet Fitness and the Maryland Jockey Club. And I still have been getting my WNST text. I will tell you that. And it's been fast and furious, as I've just pointed out. Lots of exits, lots of entries, opening day, March Madness. Maybe Duke, who knows? Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.